Welcome to Mind, Money, Balance, the no guilt, no shame podcast to help you get your mind and money in balance. I'm your host, Lindsay. I'm a financial therapist and coach, woman of color, and popcorn connoisseur. I am so glad you're here. Let's go. So back in November, I increased the output of my podcast cadence to twice a week. And I realized in December, I was kind of on the edge of burning out again. And my burnout back in September looked like getting physically ill. And what I realized in December was that when I took 2 long weekends, and I really slept and I really didn't work in between my rewatching of Harry Potter and baking bread, I, no surprise, felt better. And then as soon as work kind of resumed at the start of 2021, I realized that I was just exhausted. And like many people in a capitalist society, when I get anxious, I have this urge to want to do something. Over the past 10 months, if you're like me and you're in the United States, we've experienced a pandemic, an increase in dangerous white supremacy. We are in a government that doesn't really cut us slack for living at work, if you are fortunate enough to be able to work from home, or give balance and support financially, emotionally, all of the things to people who have to go into work. And so to practice what I preach, I'm dialing back my podcast episodes to once a week on Mondays. Did I spiral in my head about decreasing the cadence of them from twice a week to once a week? Yes, I did. I had originally come up with like a very grandiose plan of like picking an end date and taking a break and then coming back and making a big announcement. But I'm really fortunate to have people in my corner who help me to really adhere to my boundaries and to remind me to practice what I preach. So anyway, if you were used to getting them twice a week and you were so excited to continue getting them twice a week, I'm sorry to tell you, I got to do them once a week. My brain and body is not able at this point in time to do them twice a week, so you can catch them on Mondays. So let me tell you a little bit about today's guest before we get into our interview. Raina LaGrand uses she, her pronouns. She's a somatic therapist and educator specializing in trauma, oppression, healing justice, and body liberation. Raina feels most alive when she's able to help others be in their bodies and in relationship with others, being fully present and having agencies. Raina's services include individual psychotherapy, relationship therapy, and coaching for helping professionals. She also provides educational programs for therapists and to the general public. In this episode, we cover the power of nuance, how important it is to give ourselves permission to dream bigger, and finding support from others. And this really echoes what I talked about at the start of this episode, at the start of this intro, is we need support. Even if we know what we want to do or we have plans to do, it makes it so much easier when others are in our corner helping us to hold ourselves accountable, even if that accountability is doing less. So get ready to enjoy today's episode with Raina LaGrand. Welcome, Raina, to the Mind, Money, Balance podcast. I'm so excited that you'll be joining us.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. So tell the listeners a little bit about yourself professionally and also personally. Like, what's bringing you joy? What are you doing for fun these days?
Oh, I love that. So my name is Raina LaGrand. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a somatic therapist who lives in Ypsilanti, Michigan, and I work with people around the state right now due to COVID and telehealth, which is the gift of telehealth, is being connected to more folks. So in my work, I really integrate all of my experience as a yoga teacher, a therapist, a public health professional, a health educator, to help people, especially those of us who live in bodies that are oppressed, find agency and presence in a world where it's not handed to us on a platter. I'm really passionate about helping people feel better in their bodies and in their relationships. And I recently launched my private practice, Root to Rise Somatics, which is a way that I've been able to step into alignment with myself. It's been an amazing journey.
And what about for fun?
For fun, I am enjoying a lot of different things. I am good at the fun part of self-care.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. So I have really been enjoying cooking, though I'm not as energetic lately, but when I do cook, I feel like I'm really making like yummy stuff. So I've been enjoying like slow cooking things in my Dutch oven, and I've been perfecting different recipes like Ethiopian, the chicken, forgetting what it's called, dalwat, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm really enjoying as well making mocktails. I'm a cocktail person, but throughout the day, I really need mocktails to keep me going. Just fun drinks. So different sparkling water creations or tea creations, definitely like finding a lot of joy in the food and drink area of self-care and pleasure these days. And then really enjoying watching just like silly TV.
Yes.
I'm watching The Bachelorette, which I've never done.
Yes. Listeners will know that I'm a Bravo fanatic, but I think, it's as therapists, we need something that is so mindless. Like pre-pandemic, I trended towards foreign films and documentaries, but now I'm like, oh man, I'm on the road to burnout. I need something that is totally light and mindless. So thank you for validating other folks who are out there watching The Bachelorette right now.
Oh, yes, absolutely. The Bachelorette. We can talk about the Kardashians all day, but I'm not missing an episode. So
yes. Oh, well, thank you for that introduction. I love that your work is so emblematic of the title of your private practice, which is Root to Rise, right? Really being interconnected, being in your body, especially a body that is marginalized. I love that work for you. So as we talk about inhabiting a marginalized body, I have to imagine it impacts our relationship with money. So how has your identity shown up in your relationship with money?
You asking me to be on the podcast made me think about this a little bit more, right? I grew up in a family that both of my parents came from military families. They didn't grow up with a whole lot of money. My dad, at least, I know his family received food stamps for some time. And both of my parents were able to sort of bust out of that, especially my dad professionally. So I was really lucky, right? Wanted to kind of grow up with more resources than they did. And I knew that. And I think I'm biracial too. My mom is white and my dad is Black. And in every sense of the word, or the phrase, I feel like I have been walking the line. And money was one of those places too, where I knew that I had enough, but my whole adult life, it has never felt like enough, right? Because I made just enough to get by. Being in the field of social work and social justice then is totally confusing for a young person who doesn't quite know exactly who they are yet or hasn't exactly made sense of walking that line, right? So I definitely, until, the last year or two, was one of those people who lived by the mantra that I wasn't in it for the money. And that was something I would say, right? And that I wanted to be accessible and that therapy should be accessible. And that's something I still believe. But in my body, I actually have experienced a lot of anxiety over my adulthood, especially, right? Knowing that I needed more, but not feeling like I could ask for it or deserved it or was in a field where it was going to happen.
Yeah, and this theme of accessibility and money comes up with therapists all the time, that we immediately think the only way to be accessible to our clients is in a financial way. And of course, that is an area of accessibility, but there are so many other ways in which we can be accessible to our clients, right? The key phrase that I often hear is meet them where they're at. And for our clients, that yes, of course, money plays a part in it, but other modes of accessibility include things like maybe doing body work and not really doing the psychotherapy talking. It may be being in a location that is physically accessible to a person with physical disabilities. It may be seeing, neurodivergent folks. It may be seeing people who also occupy marginalized bodies, right? There are so many other ways that we can be accessible outside of the financial realm. I know you shared that you kind of just are planting the seeds of Root to Rise, your own private practice. What types of kind of obstacles did you have to overcome in terms of the financial piece of going out into private practice? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, there was this day back in August where I realized how much choice I had actually now being in private practice, having 2 master's degrees. There was just a day where I realized I've been assuming kind of that in moving over to private practice from group practice, that I'm just sort of shifting everything. Going to bring all my clients, everything's going to be the same. So I had to give myself permission to dream bigger and actually start my business, right? Yeah. Not just transfer my clients. And that's when I realized that the insurance piece is something that's brought me a great amount of anxiety.
Yeah.
And so I gave myself permission one day to think about what my practice could be like if I actually worked outside of an insurance network. And from there, it honestly just felt like a stack of dominoes. It was just like, and then I set up an appointment with you. I was like, oh my God, okay, I'm doing this.
Yes.
And I kind of came to terms with it myself, where I realized myself, I'm very open about this. I recently, in the last year, discovered that I have a spinal fracture that I've been living with for about 10 years and arthritis. And I have to purchase my healthcare from the marketplace, right? So the big thing for me was realizing, I'm trying to be accessible by being in network. But that actually means then that I don't make enough money to buy my own healthcare that I now need as somebody with a disability, essentially. So I really came to terms with that myself, but then I had to share that with my clients. Going into private practice, everybody says, oh my God, yay, that's so exciting. We're so happy for you. Doing things a little differently. This is what it's going to look like. And my clients sort of had the range of reactions to that. And I had to really work with myself on not letting my savior part step in. Not letting the part of me that is an anxiously attached person and afraid of being abandoned and alone drive my business. To be honest, I mean, that's been something I've been dealing with up until today when I had my last sessions at the group practice. This feeling like, this client maybe could use one more session, but I have to really set boundaries for myself.
I totally hear that excitement of when you tell somebody, I'm going into private practice, and the cheers, and then and here's the boundary too. Here's the container in which I'm going to operate my practice. And, oftentimes as therapists, I love that you touched on that saviorism, that sometimes we feel like we're the only person that can really provide them with the type of XYZ that they need. And remembering that these are resilient humans who also have an array of resources they can tap into. And hopefully in therapy, we help them to see those things, see their strengths and see their resources. But also they're so much stronger than oftentimes we give them credit for, even though we know in our mind's eye and in our heart that they're a strong person in whatever way strong shows up. But I really appreciate you saying that. What about how it felt for you on the kind of peer side or on the colleague side? What did that feel like to say, hey, by the way, I'm leaving group practice and doing my own thing?
Yeah. I mean, I'm so lucky. I think, if you're a social worker, probably 90% of your friends are social workers.
Yes, so true.
And my friends love me. I'm so blessed. So it was kind of twofold, I guess. On the one hand, there were those who were unequivocally excited for me.
Yeah.
And were saying, yes, you should charge this and you can charge more. And there are also, I'm really lucky to have a network of like more seasoned therapists who I've done trainings with, who I see as mentors, who one person told me they were inspired by my fee structure. And that was really amazing. But, then there were my friends who are still working their way through their own internalized saviorism and trauma stewardship, who were like, whoa, what? Like for a couple of my friends, it just blew their mind.
Yes.
That, and not even the insurance piece, just that I could go into private practice and have an ideal client. Yes. That I could actually, my friend sarcastically said, like, you mean you can do exactly what you want and only work with the clients you want to and make a living wage? What? Yeah. And I felt like I use parts work in my work. So I felt like my part come up that wanted to be defensive. I felt the part of me come up that wanted to cower. It's been an educational, enlightening experience for me. And that's how I've been trying to use it for my peers who are more surprised by what I've decided to do, is to provide a little education and encouragement around what their options are, even if that includes, things that I chose not to do.
Yes. Yes. And that's exactly it. Is people are going to respond how they respond. It's our job to regulate our emotions with how those responses come in. And what I appreciated about that story was you heard both sides of it, and you didn't let either side kind of sway you. You made this decision coming from what works for you, what dollars you need to bring in, and how that was going to kind of show up in your practice. So what do you say to the folks who might say, oh my gosh, well, now you're only for people who can afford private pay, or now you're not allowing as much accessibility to your practice? What are the other things you have done to provide accessibility outside of the financial way?
Yeah, so I have offered public workshops, which is something I'm going to continue doing. And I have dreams of all different sorts of fee structures, things that are donation-based, things that are free, things that are paid. I have an Instagram account. I have a very low-key podcast that I've been sort of playing with over the last year. And when I have downtime, I offer drop-in yoga classes. Yep. So, that's one of the things that excites me about my work too, is having all that variety. So I try to offer variety. And I'm looking forward to when I get to a place financially and especially related to my health where I can say, hey, I do have a pro bono spot, or I do have a sliding scale spot. I just know that I have to really serve myself first. There are so many ways to receive care. And I think especially in the trauma world and in the healing justice world, and among, especially Black practitioners, there's so much more focus on the healing capacity of relationships and community that, I often see therapists as a replacement for traditional models of healing and grief. I think we all ancestrally had those spaces and systems for grief that aren't necessarily there anymore. And so I sometimes see my role as a therapist as one way that I sort of supplement that loss in the meantime. But I think really I'm more interested in helping people feel connected to each other than to me. That makes sense.
No,
of course I want to feel connected, but
yeah, it makes perfect sense. And what I also heard you say is the beauty of being in private practice gives you the flexibility to have a business that works for you and for your community, right? Yeah. The way that I heard your business model kind of set up is almost as though running a full fee practice, a cash practice, affords you the ability to kind of offer community scholarships by way of public speaking, by way of low cost workshops, right? It supplements the other. So I think that's a really great way to set it up. And in terms of the practicalities, are there certain tools, podcasts, books that have been really helpful for you as you have kind of moved into private practice?
Yeah, definitely. You Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love following you on Instagram.
FYI, Raina was not paid to say that.
Yeah, no, I was not. But yeah, everybody should book an appointment with Lindsay.
Oh, thank you.
Even before I learned about your work, I learned about Tiffany McLean's work, who I know is a recent
She was on the
guest,
podcast
right?
today. Yeah.
And a woman of color. And
Yes.
so I sort of followed her work. And both of you have really full, spunky personalities too, right? So I appreciate that because it's not dry. It's not, no offense to Susie Orman, but we're a new generation now. We need like a little bit more. And I'm trying to think what else. I mean, there are definitely people that I know more through the Instagram community, such as Mishara over at To Indie with Love. She's based in Indiana. She's a Black person who, stopped taking insurance and was very public about her reasons for doing so and used it as an opportunity to educate clients in the community as well. And then I just continually turn back to my community for validation.
Yep.
Honestly. Yep. I think it's okay to just call up that person who is going to tell you what you need to hear.
Yep.
In the moment. I'm trying to think if I've answered your question, like what resources, right, essentially have been useful to me. Yeah, those are the big ones. And just trusting myself. I actually felt like I needed to step away from reading books and listening to podcasts and taking trainings because I'm somebody who can overconsume education to the point where I'm like always trying to integrate new concepts. And I just had to really trust that I was doing what was best for me.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to go on a little tangent here because I pull from astrology as a way to connect with my ancestors. And I had a reading done by my friend Leslie Tagorda, who's also half Filipina like me. And she told me that my ideal clients embody a lot of those Gemini traits, which is overconsumption of content and struggle to implement because they want to do it the right way. So I find it really fascinating that that's what you just brought up. I'm like, oh my gosh, Raina, it makes so much sense.
Yes, I'm a Virgo.
I'm a Virgo too.
Oh, okay, great. Yes, but Gemini are summer babies. So I feel like if you're a summer baby, Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I love that. So what I heard for you is a few things. One is just education was really important to you. Education, not even in terms of do X, then Y, but education more along the lines of validation and how you can provide care in an ethical way and not do some of the things that a lot of people think they have to do in private practice, like taking insurance, like maybe not offering a sliding scale, right? There are many different ways that we can operate a private practice. But I heard for you that it was seeing that it's possible from other people and in particular from women of color. That was really important to you as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh,
yes.
Great.
Yeah.
So as we kind of come to a close with our chat today, where can people follow along with you and find out more about you and your work?
So people can follow me on Instagram. I'm at Root to Rise Somatics. You can also, that's my website, roottorisesomatics.com. You can email me at Raina@roottorisesomatics. And then, like I said, I have this low-key podcast called the Yoga Praxis Podcast, which you can search on essentially any podcast platform, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Pandora, etc. This year it was interviewing folks with yoga, movement, or contemplative practice about their individual practices, but I think it will take a different shape in 2021. So those are just really nice, I think, normalizing, validating conversations to listen to if you're somebody who enjoys yoga or wants to, but struggles with their body or anything like that.
And you said Praxis, Praxis?
XAS, yes.
Okay. I wanted to make sure I didn't mishear practice. So, okay.
Yes.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, this was such a joyful conversation about how we can do things differently, how women of color and people who are in marginalized bodies can take up space and create practices that work for them and their community, right? It doesn't have to be an either or, right? You're not an evil capitalist if you charge for your services. And there are ways to build a practice that feel really good. And Raina, you sharing how you have set yours up and how it took you a little while to get there, I think is going to be so validating for our listeners.
Yes. Yeah. I just want folks to know they can do it. Whatever it is that you need from your job, of course, there are very real systemic barriers and obstacles. And also, you're not going to get there unless you give yourself permission,
Yes. And that's one of my favorite things about being in private practice is I'm my only gatekeeper.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
For better or for worse. But that's it. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining. And I will make sure to send everybody over all of Raina's website and Instagram will all be linked in the show notes. So you can follow her at Root to Rise.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Of course. Let's get into the takeaways from my conversation with Raina. So the first takeaway I got was money doesn't have to be an either or. So in private practice, if you're a therapist and you're in private practice, I want for you to remember that you can provide community care by charging full fees in your practice and offering other services that are low cost or no cost in your community. Think things like a podcast, a blog, maybe lower cost groups or informational classes, speaking engagements at your library, school, places of worship. There are so many different ways for you to be involved in your community and provide mental health care access that don't involve you sliding your scale down to zero. Now, if you're not a private practice therapist and you're wondering how to think of money not as an either or, try to not think of it in that black and white. It's not good or bad. Having money doesn't make you greedy and not having money doesn't automatically make you pious. Find space for the nuance, for that space in the middle. And I cannot remember for the life of me where I heard this, but it really resonated with me. This idea that in between black and white is not gray. In between black and white is the rainbow, right? All of these different options, all of these different possibilities that exist when we allow ourselves to live in nuance. And if you remember who that quote is by, please ping me. I will give them total credit. I definitely did not make it up. Takeaway number 2, permission to dream bigger. Again, if you're a private practice therapist, this might look like only seeing the types of clients who light you up. It might look like only working 3 days a week. If you are not a private practice therapist listening to this, how can you dream bigger in your relationship with money? Instead of get out of debt, I want for you to think of, yes, get out of debt, and what would it feel like to get out of debt? How would your shoulders fall away from your ears? How would you feel additional excitement if you were out of debt? What does it feel like to dream bigger beyond just that checkbox thing that is on your to-do list? And thirdly, find other people who support your dreams. Whether it's finding other therapists, listening to other podcasts, finding inspiring Instagram accounts, find people who have done the thing that you are interested in doing, or find people who can cheer you on and inspire you to find your dreams. I mentioned at the top of this episode that I am pulling back on doing my podcast twice a week and doing them once a week instead. And honestly, a big part of that was that I have a community of other women entrepreneurs who I'm in touch with. And I said, hey, this is what I want to do, but I'm really thrashing around in my head. Can you help me out? And they all helped to support my boundaries so that I could really show up intentionally. So the other thing I want to say about finding people who support your dreams, look for people who are in marginalized groups, especially if you're in a marginalized group. Look for other people in that marginalized group who have charted a path in a way that works for them. This could be with their business. This could be with their job. This could be with the way that they're raising their children. This could be their choice to not have kids. But look for other folks who are doing similar things because representation matters. And when we can see other folks who look like us, sound like us, walk like us, talk like us, who are doing things that inspire us, it helps us to see that that path is possible. Now, before we wrap it up today, Raina gave me permission to expand on what she meant when she said, oh, I worked with you or when we worked together. What that meant was that we did a one-time power coaching session. So a power coaching session is really for my private practice therapists who are looking for a little bit of help in that like pick your brain area. Maybe you want to work with me and you're not really ready to commit to a group. Maybe you really only have a couple of questions, but they are just plaguing you. It's in the hamster wheel of your mind and you're not really sure what to do with them. In a 75-minute power session, we will get laser focused on 1 to 3 things that are driving you bananas, and we will figure it out. It can be anything from money mindset to the business side of your practice. For example, I've helped people in these power sessions answer questions like, should I focus my marketing efforts on search engine optimization or Instagram? I have a goal of saving $10K before the end of the year. I need help to figure out what I can do differently to ensure I reach that financial goal. Or the logical side of my brain understands I need to raise my fee, but I feel like a fraud, a greedy capitalist, my colleagues are going to judge me, and I need backup. When you book one of these power sessions, you will get an email confirmation and a quick form to fill out so that I can understand what your current sticking points are. So when we hit start on our power session, I've got the vital information ready so we can dive right in. If you are interested in booking a power session with me, simply go to my website, mindmoneybalance.com/power session, all one word. You will get all the information you need to know there. And I wanted to share with you one more thing from Raina about what she said about doing a power session with me. And to quote Raina, Lindsay validated how inaccessible I was making my life by trying to be infinitely accessible to others, unquote. That is a powerful change that can happen so quickly simply by having somebody in your corner validate what's going on and help you understand that there is space in the world for you to make a good income and make a difference. I cannot wait until next week to have you listening again. Thank you so much for tuning in. I would love it if you could share the news about my podcast if you've been enjoying it, whether that's sharing it out on social media and tagging me at Mind Money Balance, or whether that's leaving me a little review and rating on Apple Podcasts. Those reviews and ratings make a big difference when people are scrolling through their phone and trying to make decisions on what they want to listen to. That's a great way to support me and my work without spending a dime. See you next week. If you love this episode, take a screenshot and tag me on Instagram at MindMoneyBalance with your favorite takeaway. I love seeing what resonates with my listeners and sharing it in my stories. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you next week right here. Neither the host or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, medical, or other professional information. If you want professional help, please seek it out.